Okay, welcome in. I'm now going to be finally caught up on my reviews as I'm looking at Friday's action from the National Hockey League season. There were 4 games on tap, so let's dive in. We had an original six matchup take place in Toronto as the Maple Leafs, who are still without Matthews, took on the Detroit Red Wings. In the first period, Mitch Marner would open up the scoring for the Maple Leafs, getting his third goal of the year from Nylander and Morgan Riley, 11-12 of the opening frame, a power play goal to note. In the second period, Dylan Larkin would tie the game up, getting a power play goal of his own for Larkin. That'd be his ninth goal of the season from Raymond and DeBrincat, 9-10 of the middle frame. Less than 2 minutes after that, the Leafs would have a power play, and Tavares, the former captain, would give them a 2-1 lead, his sixth goal of the year from Marner and Morgan Riley. So the Leafs had a 2-1 lead heading into the third. With a minute and a half to go, the Red Wings had their goalie pulled. John Tavares would strike, getting his second goal of the game, his seventh of the season, and the Leafs would win by a final score of 3-1. The Washington Capitals played host to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, I'm sure these two teams you could still say are rivals, but this was probably one of the biggest rivalries in like the early 2000s, late 2000s, early 2010s. These two teams always seem to make the playoffs and always seem to play against each other. And it's been a shame that the last, like, 2 out of the last 3 seasons, these two teams have not qualified for the playoffs. Obviously, Washington made it this past postseason, but they got swept. I think we'd all be in for a treat if these two teams could meet at least one more time, just one more Ovechkin and one more Crosby playoff round. Please, NHL gods. Fingers crossed. So in the first period, Erik Karlsson would kick things off, getting his second goal of the year from Malkin and Sidney Crosby just over 3 minutes into the first frame. Michael Bunting would score over 6 minutes into that frame, increasing the lead to 2-0, getting his second goal of the season, assisted by Erik Karlsson. Rasmus Sandin would score 8:22 of that same frame, getting his first goal of the year from McMichael and Tom Wilson. So heading into the second period, the Penguins had a 2-1 lead. Andrew Mangiapane would tie the game up at 2, getting his fourth goal of the year from Verana and Lapierre just over 6 minutes into the middle period. So we were all tied up at 2 after 2. Evgeny Malkin would break the tie in the third, getting his fifth goal of the year from Rust and Chris Letang, 10:28 of that third period. The Capitals, I apologize, would pull their goalie, and unfortunately it did not pan out. Noel Acciari would get credited for the empty net goal, his second of the season, assisted by Pettersson. So the Penguins would go into Washington and double up on the Capitals by a final score of 4-2. The Anaheim Ducks played host to the Minnesota Wild, who were continuing their road trip. In the first period, Jake Middleton would open up the scoring, getting his third goal of the year from Eriksson Ek, 7:31 of the opening frame. Marcus Foligno would increase the lead to 2-0, 9:11 of that same period, getting his third goal of the year from Gaudreau and Faber. Kirill Kaprizov would increase the lead to 3-0, getting his eighth goal of the year from Chisholm and Zuccarello, 12:32 of the opening frame. There was no scoring in the second, so we have to jump ahead to the third period where the Wild were still holding on to a 3-goal lead. Robbie Fabry would finally get the Ducks on the board, getting his second goal of the year unassisted, 2:16 of the third frame. Marco Rossi would increase the lead to 4-1, getting his fourth goal of the year, assisted by Kaprizov, 14:20 of the third frame. Kirill Kaprizov would get a power play goal, his ninth of the year from Rossi and Faber, 17:44 of the third, increasing the lead to 5-1. And then with just 13 seconds to go, Mason McTavish would cut the deficit to 5-2, getting his second goal of the year from Gudis and Vakanainen. But obviously with 13 seconds to go, you can't score 3 goals that fast. The Wild got 2 wins on their road trip back-to-back against the Sharks and the Ducks, respectively. And in the last game, staying in the Pacific Division, as the two newest franchises in the NHL, the Seattle Kraken and the Vegas Golden Knights, took to the ice on Friday night. Pavel Dororiev would kick things off for the Golden Knights, getting his eighth goal of the year, a power play goal from Nick Waugh and Jack Eichel, 10:13 of the opening frame. Speaking of Nick Waugh, he'd get on the goal scorer sheet himself, getting getting his fourth goal of the year from Barbashev and Jack Eichel, 13:31 of the opening period. Brandon Tanev would cut into that lead, getting his second goal of the season, unassisted with 3 minutes and 39 seconds to go on the clock. The Kraken were trailing by 1 heading into the second period. Tanev would get his second goal of the game, tying the game up at 2, getting his third goal of the year, assisted by Cartle, 7:12 of the middle frame. In the third period, Oliver Bjorkstrand would give the Kraken a 3-2 lead just over 2 minutes into the third, unassisted, and for Bjorkstrand, that'd be his fourth goal of the year. Alex Pietrangelo would score, tying the game up at 3. For Pietrangelo, that'd be his second goal of the year from Theodore and Jack Eichel, and that goal happened with 1 minute and 22 seconds to go on the clock. We would need overtime, and Jarek McCann, who I have in my fantasy league, would get an assist from Montour, who I also have in my fantasy league. So Friday was very good, to say the least. Just under a minute into the overtime frame, giving the Seattle a 4-3 overtime win. Okay, now that I'm all caught up, we can take a look at the standings as of Friday night. And I always look at the wild card spots. So, no surprise here, the Florida Panthers are still in first place in the Atlantic Division. They have a record of 10-3-1. They have 21 points. The Toronto Maple Leafs are in second place with a record of 8-5-2. They have 18 points. The Tampa Bay Lightning round out the top 3. They're 7-6-1. They have 15 points. In the Metropolitan Division, the Carolina Hurricanes are 10-2-0 for 20 points. The New Jersey Devils are 9-5-2. They also have 20 points. And the Washington Capitals are 9-4-0. They have 18 points. The two teams in the wildcard positions are the New York Rangers with a record of 8-3-1. They have 17 points. The Boston Bruins are finally back in the hunt of the playoffs. They're 7-7-1. They have 15 points. And then rounding out the rest of the Eastern Conference, the New York Islanders are 6-6-2. They have 14 points. They're right on Boston's tail, as are the Pittsburgh Penguins with a record of 6-8-2. They have 14 points as well. The Detroit Red Wings are 6-6-1. They have 13 points. The Buffalo Sabres are 6-7-1. They have 13 points. The Columbus Blue Jackets are 5-5-2 for 12 points. The Ottawa Senators are 6-7-0. They also have 12 points. Philadelphia's finally out of the basement of the Eastern Conference, but just barely. They are 5-8-1. They have 11 points. And I'm surprised, but I'm not surprised, that Montreal is in last place of the Eastern Conference with a record of 4-8-2. They better get some wins under their belt. Otherwise, Fit's going to hit the shan pretty soon. I mean, it's already been 3 years with no postseason appearance. They got to make some improvements. Okay, I'm done with my little rant. Okay, off to the Western Conference as Winnipeg Jets, no surprise, are off to their best start, I believe, in team history. After 14 games, they are 13-1-0. They have 26 points. The Minnesota Wild are 10-2-2. They have 22 points. The Dallas Stars are 8-4-0. They have 16 points, rounding up the top 3 of the Central Division. In the Pacific, the Vegas Golden Knights are top of that division with a record of 9-3-2. They have 20 points. The Los Angeles Kings are in second place with a record of 8-4-3. They have 19 points, just a point behind Vegas. And the Vancouver Canucks are 7-2-3. They have 17 points. They are 2 points behind LA and obviously 3 points behind Vegas for first place. Rounding out the 2 wildcard teams, the Calgary Flames are 7-5-2. They have 16 points. And the Utah Hockey Club are 6-5-3. They have 15 points. Take a look at the rest of the standings. The St. Louis Blues are right on the Utah Hockey Club's tail with a record of 7-7-0. They have 14 points. Edmonton is 6-7-1. They have 13 points. The Seattle Kraken are 6-8-1. They also have 13 points. Colorado is 6-8-0. They have 12 points. The Chicago Blackhawks are 5-9-1 for 11 points. The Anaheim Ducks are 4-7-2. They have 10 points. The San Jose Sharks are 4-9-2. They also have 10 points. And at the bottom of the Western Conference Division, the Nashville Predators are 4-9-1. They have 9 points. A very, very disappointing season for Nashville, to say the least. After 15 games, I don't think anybody, including myself, would have expected them to be at the bottom of that Western Conference division. And they're 6 points out of the playoff spot now. Not saying they can't play catch up because there still is lots of time and there's still lots of hockey to be played. But if you let this start slipping away, it's hard to play catch up because think they have to uh, go ahead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams just to try to get into a playoff spot, and that's very difficult to say the least. Not saying it's impossible. If I have to go back to like 2019, I think St. Louis was in last place at the end of January, and then they went on this incredible run, and obviously they went on to win the Stanley Cup that year. So nothing's impossible, but 4-9-1 after 15 games is definitely, or after 14 games, I should say, is definitely not ideal for the Nashville Predators when they had such high expectations after signing Stamkos and Marchessault and Brady Shea. And it's a shame because I thought they would have been in the top three of that Central Division. I didn't think they'd be below the Sharks and Ducks, respectively, in the standings at this point in the season. But again, there's still plenty of hockey left to be played. So they could go on a run, and they need to go on a run if they want to try and make some noise and compete for a Stanley Cup playoff position. Alrighty, that's going to take care of my recap from Friday's action of the National Hockey League season. As always, if you're new to this channel and you like this type of content, feel free to hit the sub button. I'd be very grateful and I'd be very appreciative. Until next time, and as always, take care.